Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We are now live, so can make a start. I have to advise you to note that this meeting is being webcast, and it is being webcast live, and it will be available subsequently via the Council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press or public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items. That's item one. Item two is apologies. I have apologies from Mick Brown. No other apologies as such. Declarations of interest. I don't expect there to be any. Don't appear to be any. Thank you very much. I just want to advise you of what will be a change of order on the agenda. I am having to go to a funeral this morning. I have to be up at Robin Hood by 11:30, so I will need to leave here not later than 11:45, and Kerry will then take over. And for that reason, I would like to bring item 7 after item 4, ahead of Jane, head of the Cabinet Members Report. I will hope to stay on for the full part of that Cabinet Members Report, but if I do have to leave, my apologies to Jane for doing so. Would you accept that change of order? Thank you very much. Can we then take the action notes from the 14th of October and indeed the action tracker? Any issues there? Is there anything that you want to add, Fiona?
Just on the action tracker, there are a number of outstanding actions. I will chase them before the next meeting and report back to the next meeting. And if needed, on your behalf, can ask officers to attend the meeting to update.
Okay, and I've had actually words with Richard Brooke just this morning. He was introducing himself in person to people because up to now, all he's been is a face on the screen. So he was trying to say he is a real person, and he has gone away to try and ensure that some of those actions, which are his, are responded to. So there we are. Okay, that's item 4. If we then move to item 7, which is the Customer Services Programme Scrutiny Task and Finish Group's Terms of Reference and Update.
I appreciate there's the need for speed, but could I just give Deidre Oldham's apologies for the meeting?
You can. Thank you very much. I thought I'd dealt with that item though, but
Well, it was my fault then.
But they are noted. Right, the Customer Services Programme Scrutiny Task and Finish Group Terms of Reference Update. The terms of reference are before you. We thought it would be a good idea to ensure that the terms of reference were properly documented, and we knew in which direction, if you like, the task force was moving. To tell you in terms of update, we have meetings which are scheduled to meet with housing and neighbourhoods on the bereavement issues on the 24th of November. Highways were scheduled for the 25th of November. Unfortunately, that's had to be cancelled and a new date is being found. We're meeting on housing on the 29th of November and waste on the 5th of December. So I would hope, therefore, to have a report on the recommendations that have come through the Customer Services Programme in relation to bereavement, highways, housing and waste, to have a report on those recommendations and how those recommendations are being taken forward at the next meeting of this committee on the 9th of December. That will allow us then to move on and pick up on the issue that we have in the terms of reference, which is the fact that what customer services are also doing at the moment is going through a series of workshops with members of staff on the culture agenda. And therefore, we will be able to look at where we're going in respect to that aspect of customer services work. By the 9th of December, we'll also know whether phase 2 of the customer services programme is committed, because there's a report due to go to Cabinet, which I've had a preview of, a report due to go to Cabinet on the 5th of December, if my memory serves me correctly. So we'll know what the future programme is, and we'll therefore know how it is we can tune the work of the Task and Finish group to meet up with the phase 2 work of customer services. What is intended is they move on from where they are at the moment on fix the basics to then look at how we can bring about that improvement in customer service. So it's about the future and those improvements. And I'd hope this Task and Finish group could add some value to the next phase of the programme, as we are trying to add value to the current phase. So that's where we're at. I would hope there will be a written report at the next meeting, giving you much more detail than I've been able to give you verbally this morning. Any questions? No. So can we accept that as a report and accept the terms of reference, or note the terms of reference as are included in your documentation? Okay. Yeah. Jane, that allows me to move on to yourself. So we now move on to. Wendy is there. Sorry, Wendy.
Apologies. No problem at all, Councillor. Thank you. So it's just to confirm that the Cabinet report date is the 13th of December. So we'll be able to feedback hopefully positively after the Cabinet report on the 13th as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for putting me right. I didn't have the note in front of me which told me what the date of the next Cabinet meeting was, so I invented it.
No problem.
And that's the secret of your success.
Okay, we'll move on. Thanks very much for that, Wendy. We'll move on to the next report, which is the Cabinet Member Portfolio Priorities. And I'd ask Jane Francis, the Cabinet Member for Digital, Culture, Heritage and Tourism, to speak to her report, and no doubt the officers will come in behind.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I will try not to invent anything this morning. So help it. Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for inviting me here today to talk about my portfolio responsibilities and how they relate to the IT and digital part of my portfolio. As you may know, my Cabinet portfolio responsibilities changed in May of this year, and that means that I'm now lead member for IT and digital, including open data, information governance, digital inclusion, digital strategy, and digital city ambitions for both the city, the region, and nationally. So taking the reins from the Deputy Leader, Councillor Jones, I'm now the Council's ambassador for digital innovation, to ensure that we make best possible use of the data and digital technology so that our services can respond even better to the changing needs and expectations of our citizens and businesses. We're really pleased to have brought the service back in-house in 2019. It's given us some distinct advantages and enables us to respond in a very timely, cost-effective manner to all issues. I'm delighted this morning to be, can I say, but both sides of me. Joined by, on my left, the Director, Peter Bishop, Assistant Director, and Raj Mack, who's Head of Digital City and Innovation. Last month, I attended Audit Committee, giving assurance to committee members around the risks in my portfolio, and in particular protecting the Council's data and assets. And we'll cover this later on in the presentation, if that's acceptable. So I'm now going to hand over to Peter Bishop, who's going to talk through our ambition and start off with a number of slides saying what our thinking and strategy is going forward for the next few years for the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. And just by way of an apology, the Assistant Director for IT and D, Gerald Doran, unfortunately is off sick this morning and wasn't able to join and contribute to this session. Fiona, could I ask you to go back one slide for me, please? So we've used this picture a few times to illustrate how all the components of the work that we're doing on our digital ambition a few times, but it's just worth just cantering around. And I think it's also just worth really being clear on this word digital and what we mean, what difference we're now approaching it. So we talk about digital citizens. We can't lose sight of the fact that a lot of citizens aren't digitally enabled, and that's where digital inclusion comes in. We talk about digital council, so that's about how the council is efficient and effective in the way it uses its technology. We talk about the digital city, and Raj will bring to life that a bit as well. And that's then how the city embraces technology, data, ways of working to improve how we live and work. And then we're obviously part of the combined authority. The West Midlands is a very strong partnership working now across the region, because many of the issues are order. So it all comes together. All of these things and all of the work we're doing represent our ambition. So we use this brand called Digital Birmingham, which is internationally recognised, and we're really reinforcing that, because that's such an important part of how we drive innovation, attract investment into the city. But I think we need to just unpick the word digital. Is it a website? Is it technology? Is it data? To some degree, it's all of those things, but it's about those culture, processes, business models, and technologies of the internet era. It's about redesigning services, and it's about the citizens' needs at the foremost. And that may sound like motherhood and apple pie, but it actually is a fundamental change to where we were pre-2019. When all of this was managed by a major outsourcing provider, which you'll probably know. So ultimately, it's about maximising the value of that data, the technology infrastructure, the people, to get the best outcomes. So to make this work across the council and across the city, then we're integrating a lot of activity together and taking a very different approach, but approach that is actually well rehearsed in other local authorities, national government, and particularly in things like adult services, where a lot of that co-production is a really important part of it. So the digital strategy, Fiona, if you could move us on, sorry. We've got 5 priorities: online services that are easy to use, but not forgetting that equity of access, and Raj will talk about the digital inclusion work in a minute. Giving our teams the right tools to do the jobs that they need them to do, putting the best technology and infrastructure together to support those services. And we presented to Cabinet a couple of weeks ago about how we are standardising the tools and platforms that we're using. Again, we had a proliferation of platforms, a proliferation of cost, a proliferation of confusion for citizens. So that's how that sort of comes together. Data and evidence making, and Raj will bring to life how that we're working on that through the data programme. And also then about council's digital and data skills. And as Councillor Francis knows in her own right, how can Councillor Francis and all the other Cabinet members play their role as digital leaders across the portfolios of work that they drive, and also there in the way the city comes together. So the customer service programme, and you've mentioned that before, Councillor Ball, there's lots of work, and I know you're going to deep dive on some areas and there's some follow through. So that's an example of creating online services. Our new ways of working programme, all of that agility, flexible working. Field worker, you may have heard of this as it's go to actually live now. We've got people out in the field, not having to go back in the office to find out what work they need to do. Simple things, but it's driving efficiency and improvement, and actually keeping them safe in the work that they do. But I've mentioned about the technology roadmap. We'll deep dive on the data programme as well. And there's a lot of work on skills, capabilities, and that confidence of our staff to work. Next slide, please. In terms of the digital service, it's quite simple. We want excellent customer experiences. So when you have issues, when our employees have issues, we need to make sure we fix it. And the pandemic has been, while awful in many regards, has sharpened up our customer experience with regards to other services that access that. We need to keep the lights on all the time, 99.9% availability. We are a 24/7 operation, so we need to keep that safe. Delivering amazing digital products. And when we talk about this, this is about when we've embraced the internet era, we've looked at all those products and we're delivering game-changing solutions. And we've got lots of ideas and also activity going on to really rethink completely what the employee and customer experience is going to be. And then absolutely keeping the council's data and information assets safe. And in some respects, that should say that that's the data that we hold on behalf of the people that we serve. So those are and we'll deep dive a little bit on that in a minute. I'll hand over to Raj to give you a very brief précis of the digital city work, and then I'll come back in on information governance.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, everybody. Just moving on to the Digital City Programme. So the Digital City Programme was a response to the sustainable economic recovery challenge that we face both during COVID and post-COVID needs. What it does, it sets out some of the key things that we felt that we needed to do to support the city through recovery and ensure that we had an infrastructure fit for purpose that would support a number of key outcomes that we wanted to deliver. And some of those key outcomes we determined were things like making sure we had the right infrastructure that would support both entrepreneurship across the city and support innovation and support our SMEs. We looked at digital inclusion. We recognised that digital inclusion was a problem before the pandemic, and certainly the pandemic drew out what the big problems were and how much we really need to respond. So our programme looked at how digital inclusion and connectivity could be better enhanced for both citizens and businesses. The programme is about achieving greater inward investment, inward investment for the city, bringing those big companies, bringing that innovation, making Birmingham a place where digital technology is enhanced, is embraced and supported throughout that process. And Peter's mentioned data. We want to make sure that we are using the city's data, not just the city council's data, to bring those insights, to create that creativity for SMEs and support different organisations to be able to reuse that data and create those collaborations and partnerships with the different organisations across the city. And finally, we want to make sure that Birmingham gets the recognition it deserves. We want to make sure that Birmingham is seen as a leading digital city across the world. And we believe that if we can achieve those outcomes, that will help us do that. But I just want to stress that this is not an IT and technology project. This is about bringing together the right ecosystem so that we can support citizens and businesses to work, live, work and learn in the city and improve their life chances. Next slide, please. So in doing that, we wanted to make sure that we concentrated on the right priorities. And these priorities were not developed in a room sitting with city council officers, but we went out to talk to different stakeholders across the city. We met with different organisations, entrepreneurs, SMEs, the community sector, to really get an understanding of what the city needed and what those partners needed from us to support the city to develop its sustainable economic growth opportunities. And what they recognise is that we did need good governance across the city, lots of different things happening, but no coordination, no overall leadership. And what they've asked us to do is facilitate some of that leadership and bring it to light. And so we've set up a governance and a leadership approach that brings in different city partners to support and help us identify the right challenges, the right priorities to move forward and make sure we are addressing the key challenges and the grand challenges of the city moving forward. And that's one of the key programs that we put in place. And we already have a partnership of the willing. We have a number of organisations, big corporate organisations, as well as small SMEs to support that capability moving forward. One of the key things was getting the infrastructure right. Without the right infrastructure, we will not attract the investment. We will not get all the opportunities that digital technologies are offering. So as part of our programme, we are working with our partners and with the city to ensure that we get the right infrastructure. And that programme is about ensuring that we can accelerate full fibre across the city, make the most of things like full 5G capabilities. We know these are innovative technologies. We know these are game changers moving forward. So we want to make sure that we're at the front part of this and making sure that we are supporting the city and the city partners to use that technology. And so we are calling those our enabling capabilities. Again, data has been mentioned by Peter, and data is really important. We've already started working in the city around the City Observatory, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But we don't want this just to be a city initiative. So what we are doing is making sure we're bringing our right partners together, bringing the private sector, the public sector and the academic sector together to ensure that we are using that data effectively. And what we're intending to establish a data charter that sets out the principles and the ethics of how we will share that data so it can be reusable and will accelerate innovation and greater insights for the city. And we can't have a digital city without community-led innovation. Over the years, we have seen how communities have plugged a lot of the gaps that we cannot fill, and we want to make sure that they are part of the infrastructure of the city. And we are doing a number of activities to support that economic opportunity for them and give them greater resilience, greater opportunities, and a number of projects like the digital neighbourhoods work that we've done, like the digital inclusion activities that we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about that, but making sure that we are providing them with opportunities and making sure they're part of the ecosystem of the city. And finally, we recognise that carbon reduction is a key issue for us. We know that technology will play a major role in that, and a lot of our projects and programmes are trying to see how we can use technology much more effectively so we can help change people's behaviours in how they use technology, but make sure that we have the right infrastructure so we can monitor better, control better, and reduce the amount of carbon reductions we're creating as a city. Next slide, please. So this is now going into more of a deeper dive into digital inclusion. So again, as I mentioned, with digital inclusion, we recognise that digital inclusion was an issue even before the pandemic began. When the pandemic hit us, it really made us realise how big an issue this was, certainly for our vulnerable adults, but our young children as well. Realised that we didn't have the right infrastructure in place, and we certainly didn't have the right capabilities for all the communities out there. So could you move next slide, please? Sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Can we get the next slide?
So go back now. Sorry, Joe. Thank you. It's fine.
Oh, that's it, sorry.
Next one.
Thank you.
Next one.
Sorry.
That one. Thank you. It's like Bernie the Bolt.
Friday, come on.
I'm glad this isn't a presentation on IT. Digital skills.
So I forgot my train of thought. No, so what we realised that this was a real issue, and the city really took a really proactive action to really support this. It set out a digital inclusion strategy and it created an action plan. And both those documents were produced and co-created by the community. It wasn't a city council strategy, but a city strategy of the city with a lot of the community sector and voluntary sector organisations helped create that action plan. And out of that came out a number of issues that the city needed to do, the city council needed to do. It recognised that we were not about recreating what was happening in the city already. There are lots of expert groups out there, lots of good organisations doing lots of different things, but there were clear gaps and there were clear issues around silo working, and there was a real opportunity for the city to step in and provide some leadership and coordination in this role. So a digital inclusion team has been set up by the city, and its role is to really provide that connection between the communities and support and fill the gaps out there to support and really enhance the digital inclusion capability. So here are some of the things that they have really prioritised at the moment. They've been mapping out how we can get device banks and data banks to raise their profile, making sure that people are aware of these. The private sector has responded. There are community banks, device banks being created, but they're not very well publicised and most people don't know about them. So as part of the team, they're making sure that people have been aware of this, communities know this, and even the City Council itself has set up its own Birmingham Device Bank, which enables us to start providing vulnerable people and those people will need with devices into the community. So that's one of the things that we've really been doing. We've also started mapping out existing programs. We're recognising there is lots of silo activity out there, and our role is to really try to link those different things together so that we can create an end-to-end opportunity rather than individual activities for people and then that skill being lost because they've not been able to develop it further. So that's been part of the work, and we've been working with community groups, public sector and private sector faith organisations to bring those different groups together. We've also been working with a lot of the internet service providers and other public organisations to ensure that digital inclusion is understood by them. There are lots of definitions about digital inclusion, and some of the national definitions don't really do it justice. lots of people have different types of exclusion. So you could be digitally included today because you know how to use a computer, but technology is changing so much. We need to ensure that our most vulnerable and our citizens can ensure that they are keeping up with that technology. So we're making sure that we are working with our different partners, DWP, some of the universities, to ensure that we've got the right capability and we are helping them influence their policy capabilities. So we're recognising that digital inclusion needs to be built into those type of activities. We're beginning to identify areas and circumstances where we need to intervene, and that's data again. Data has been a key strand through all of this, using dairy maps, which are mapping out where the areas of deprivation are, using other activities that other people have done, like we've had from Lottie, personas of what types of people are excluded, why they're excluded, and how we can actually support those people. We've used that data to really target our plans and make sure we are intervening at the right time with the right people, with the right type of activity. And finally, what we wanted to do is setting up digital champion, recognising that we need to build the capacity across the city. We can't do it all. So we've been working with the NHS, we've been working with the libraries, we've been working with different groups to set up digital champions, and I'm really pleased that other organisations like Barclays are helping us to upskill some of the people in there so they can become trainers as well to really create that ecosystem across the whole of the city.
Part of that, by the way, we've upgraded all the libraries with their equipment. It's all out of date, so that the equipment that they could use and the community could use would work. I think we're rolling out probably about 800 devices to community groups, and have done, I think it's 200 or 300 already with a whole raft of trainings.
About 650 desktops have already gone out, so there's a lot of work that we're doing, and our work now is around support, providing that framework to support all communities to come in.
We're integrating that into the work on living in terms of warm spaces, so people have got access and fast signposting into schools, as well as part of that. So again, just integrating it together so the customer experience is as good. Well,
Just move on to the next slide, please.
And the next one.
And the next one. Okay, just a little bit about open data and the data program. So as you know, data has been mentioned throughout this process, and data is, as they say, the golden thread, and often it's been cited as the new oil in terms of driving the economy moving forward. So it has been really important, and the city has responded in a really good way to make sure we are making the most of the data that we have, but there's still lots to do. So we have started developing City Observatory. That's been developed by the Insights team, and that is going to be launched on the 22nd of November. And that's a fabulous opportunity to show how the city is using its data. New dashboards being created as a result of it, and it builds on the work that we've done earlier. So we initially had the Birmingham Data Factory, which was our initial approach to have open data out there. That's been built on, upgraded, and this really provides an opportunity to become much more richer in terms of the types of data we provide and how we provide it, and also builds on the work that we did as a city during the pandemic. The data work that was done was absolutely fabulous. That where we identified most vulnerable people, where we need to take food packages to, all those things were done through really good analysis of data, and this piece of work now builds on that and will give us even greater insights. But we recognise that having the dashboard by itself needs to have further support. So we want to make sure that we've got the right data transparency and the right data ethics around this, so that we are making sure that we're using our data in the right way. We give confidence and trust to other organisations who are using that data and are providing that data. So what we're trying to do is establish that Birmingham Data Charter, which will set out as a public document, will set out the ethical way we will use the data, how it will be reused, and how different partners across the city can actually then sign up to this charter and have the confidence that their data will be used properly and correctly, and will provide opportunities for others to be able to innovate over that. We're also trying to make sure that we have the right capabilities, and as part of the work that's been done, a team is being recruited to make sure that we have the right skills and capabilities to address the many use cases that are being put forward to the city. There are loads of different activities we can do and get the right insights from, but we need to make sure we have the right skills, the right capabilities, And part of that program is to make sure we have that capability brought into the city so we can address the grand challenges and the real needs that we have. And finally, what we've been doing is developing a number of use cases. So there's a number of use cases already been identified. And what I'll go on to show is some of those use cases and dashboards that have been created as a result of this program. But there is lots more to come. The next slide, please.
Reasonably quickly.
Okay, so sorry. So I won't go through the detail, but this is a fabulous slide. This sets out the sort of 80 city outcomes that are needed. This is an interactive board. It gets updated on a daily basis. It is taking data from multiple sources from across the country, from everywhere we can possibly get. And this has been updated on a day-by-day basis. So it will always give you the most latest information across these areas and really be interactive. The second dashboard is really looking at how we're using the census data to get a feel for what's happening in the city, what are the changes that are taking place, and how we need to have policy changes to actually reflect and respond to some of these changes. And there's some really interesting facts already coming out there. Sorry, change the slide, sorry.
Use practice this.
So I should use paper, it's far easier. So this slide then looks at some of the dashboards and the city.
Keep going.
Dashboards and the city census, and it looks at the latest data we've had from the census to see how it is changing the city and where we are doing well, where we improve, and what policy changes could be to actually drive forward different activities across the area. And then this is, again, just an example of some of the use cases. And this is looking at the sort of financial resilience of the city and so looking at those areas that are more resilient against the cost of living activities. And the map on the sort of left-hand side, you see the lighter the colour, the more resilient the area is. And clearly you see at the core of the city, those really dark areas that shows they are really sensitive to cost of living impacts and how we potentially need to intervene in those areas. And on the right-hand side is an indication of some of the conversations that we've had with communities and different organisations and different people to get a feel for what are the things that really trouble them most and where are those conversations taking place. So again, this is an interactive one. If you click on any of this, it tells you where those conversations are most prevalent and what kind of support that's needed for those type of people.
Thanks, Raj.
So thanks.
I think well done. Yes, well done. Thank you, Fiona. The other thing to add to this is that there's an internal side of this development work as well. So building those dashboards, those interactive service performance. This is where it links to the customer service program, for example, where we're addressing complaints. We're actually presenting complaints and all that data in interactive dashboards that managers can start to use to drive performance, drive the service improvement that we're all looking for. And there are a raft of other performance related activity using data. And there is also a further phase of work to be taken on in terms of the data program that Raj mentioned. But just to come to our final piece, Fiona, if you don't mind, thank you. One of our key priorities is obviously keeping that data and those information assets all safe. And if I could just move us on again, Fiona, if you don't mind. A lot of this is obviously rooted quite rightly in the data protection legislation that was coming into effect in 2018. We had a 3-year improvement journey to improve the way we managed our data. We had a thematic approach. We looked at everything we did in terms of legal, policy, procurement, contract management, through life measures and all sorts of stuff to keep the information safe. But the most important one, and one that became very, very sensitive in 2020, was our cyber security and how resilient we were and how at risk of an attack we were. And if we were attacked through a ransomware that might come in through an email sent to yourself or myself, how our data was. And that was a shocking moment in autumn of 2020 when we assessed where we were. And basically, we were in a poor place. And if you're aware of other local authorities, Hackney is often quoted. Poor old Hackney were subject to a ransomware attack, and that disabled their whole business. And they've had to build everything up from the ground. So that was clearly something that would be absolutely terrible for us to do. Cabinet were brilliant, cited on the risks, put the investment in, and clearly from the Commonwealth Games as well, we were a vector for nation states to attack the city. So we put a lot of time and effort into doing this. The most important work we did was all around the behavioural change, training people up to recognise when they are at risk of their personal email or their work email being attacked, including yourself. That's really important to us. That is the single most important thing we can do. The human factor is such an important part of the cyber risk. However, we put a lot of technical controls in place now. Our backups are now immutable. That might sound a bit technical, it is, but if someone can encrypt your backups, you cannot recover. So that's a really important technical control that was put in place. We've also got additional technical controls, which I can go through at a few of the points, that deal with either the likelihood or, if it does happen, how you respond. And I would have to say we are in a lot better position. It's not going to be perfect. We are still at risk. It only takes one ransomware attack through a phishing email to anybody in the council to get caught out by this. But if it does happen, we have the technical controls in place to really narrow down the risk rather than it affecting everything and every single service that the council provides. And we've made great progress in that side. We've been audited, and audit have given us I'm glad to say, a very clean bill of health on that. Alongside that, as part of my other role as Senior Information Risk Officer and working with our Data Protection Officer, I've been working with officers across the council to establish the right governance to ensure that all that data and information is kept safe, including the cyber. And we review this on a quarterly basis. We have a scorecard that judges whether when there's been any network attacks, denial of service work, data privacy impact assessments, and how those things are going on. And that will further develop into focusing on data quality, because that obviously plays a key role to service delivery, and then links across to the work that we're doing in the data programme and in the City Observatory. So there's a lot of work that's going on. We can't stand on our laurels. We've still got work to do and maintain the pressure on information asset owners, assistant directors in the main, to understand how their data is being used, how they're looking after it, how they're using it, and learning the lessons about when we do get data breaches, because we do get data breaches, and the most common one is email, actually, but making sure that we learn those lessons. The other thing that's developing, as you probably know, the Information Commissioner is consulting on how ethics and artificial intelligence is going to start to play out. And I can imagine that will start to grow and become a bigger emphasis for us, particularly as we become more sophisticated and think about those early interventions that are more targeted based on the data. So that's going to be a really interesting development for us in terms of our ethics and our approach to ethics. So just to finally, and if we just move to almost the last slide, Fiona, if you don't mind. Where could you add value? In all sorts of ways. In some respects, the customer program is one great one. And in some respects, the customer program is where you'll see one of the key priorities from the digital strategy. But clearly, digital inclusion remains a factor for us. And that could be an area that you might want to think about from your work program. The digital city work It's a really interesting piece of work where we think that our role across all the city institutions that work in this city to help them deliver a much more effective living and working environment. The data charter, again, could be an area that you might want to have a look at. We talk about ethics and how that might be together. And there are probably a few others as well. In some respects, the customer service work gives you an opportunity to test what it feels like for customers in terms of how the digital strategy works together. So you're already on the basis of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you all for helping us through that this morning. I'm going to hand over to Kerry in just a moment to take on any discussion there might be on your presentation. I just make one point myself, Peter, and that is that when I was putting together data for the Ladywood Ward plan, one of my real annoyances was the fact that the data that was then available, and I'm talking about 2 years ago now, was such different dates that data was undermining itself, so to speak, because the interpretation that you could put on things was not reliable. And I hope, therefore, in building these data sets, that issue of the source and the date of the source, etc., can be better treated so that there is greater reliability, if you like, coming out of any interrogation of the information that we put out there. But it's just a small comment from me. And in having commented that way, I'm simply going to hand over to Kerry and let her lead the discussion on from there.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I have got some indicating that they want to ask questions, so I'll call Councillor Deacon in first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much to you all for the presentation. So one of the things that I think you've pointed out really easily is that any of us can be a victim of a phishing attack quickly as well. And we know that in a lot of our workplaces, in our backgrounds, that is one of the most common things that we are told to be aware of. However, it is so easy to fall victim to that. I remember that in one of my old jobs, I at the time was looking for another job and then was sent an email from what I thought was a colleague saying, "Oh, have you seen this job? Be really good for you." And I didn't click it, but for a moment I nearly did, and then thought, no. So on that though, I know you mentioned that there is training available to staff and to councillors, but I do think it might be worthwhile refreshing that, because I know I've received various kinds of attempts at phishing as a councillor on my inbox. I also would like, if possible, would it be possible to bring a report to coordinating types of attacks that we have and the number of attacks that we have, perhaps on a regular basis, so that we can also be part of that, adding value to human.
I absolutely share this report.
That was short and sweet. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. No, that's fine. I'm going to call in Councillor Lal next, please.
Thank you, Jyoti. My question is Raj and Rahim. Our digital strategy and digital city roadmap, how do we compare with the other core cities? I mean, so that's a challenge for us. Are we behind them or are we ahead of them?
It's a really great question, actually. When the digital strategy was built, we took a year to do it. And the reason we took a year to do it is because we brought in other councils to help shape it and learn from it. So in some respects, if you were to say Council X is good at this, they're probably not very good at that. And there's a lot of cross working now that we're doing and working with DLUC as well on that. I would say we are up there. Now, I appreciate that's a judgment that I am making, but in terms of our digital strategy, we are definitely. We're now getting recognised by central government because they're actually giving us money to help us develop further digital solutions. So like the field worker programme, as an example, they think that is of sufficient value that they're prepared to invest in it for other local authorities to learn from. So I take that as a great confidence boost that as they look around, they're going, hang on, they're doing some really good work on this. The other thing that we've been doing on the digital strategy is really making what they call working out loud. So we share everything. We blog on everything that's available to anybody to read. We run national events as well, so people can learn, and people want to come and learn about what we're doing. So I take that as very positive that we are up there, but our customer experience is still so poor in so many areas that says to me that we've got some catching up to do there. On our cyber, I think that is second to none, frankly, and I've looked at it in detail. We've worked through it in detail. We've audited it. That says to me that we're up there. On the digital city work, part of that work, again, we took the time to go and talk to other local authorities, commercial organisations, businesses in Birmingham. We also judged ourselves against in other cities across the world. Now, that said to us, and it was in the cabinet paper, we're sort of middling. If you think about the general maturity of how the city works, if you compare it to what Singapore is often, it's a nation state, a city state, so perhaps it's a bit easier for them. But they're way up there, sort of 5 out of 5, and I think we scored ourselves sort of 3 out of 5. I think we've got some catching up to do on that. And the work that the programme was designed is to effectively tackle those areas of weakness that you might say. And the full fibre is an example where the city is currently weak as a city. But of course, that's not about the council, it's about everyone out there. So again, I would say that one is, in terms of where we've pitched ourselves now, the time and effort we've taken to build that, people are coming to us to say, can we learn from that? But I don't think we would judge ourselves as to be that far ahead yet, simply because we only signed it off 5 months ago. So there's the practical side of it. Sorry.
What is a time frame for us as a city to get from 3 to 4 and then 5?
We haven't got a time frame,
okay,
if I'm honest, genuinely.
I like a time frame.
But it's a great question. I would say it's going to take at least 3 years.
Okay.
I mean, in some of the work that we did as part of that maturity assessment, the initial set of programs that we identified, if we get those, and there was a rough timeline for those between 5 to 10 years, which showed that we would then go up a step in that maturity level and get very close to Singapore in some areas. That will give us a great time. And what we've done since then is augmented the program even further and do further things to support that. So there is an opportunity to accelerate some of that opportunity. The other thing I would say is we presented to the National Smart City Forum, which brings in over 40, 50 different cities across the UK who all learn from each other. We presented our program to them and it was really well received, and a lot of cities have come back and saying, we want to learn from you. Could you share your thoughts with us in terms of how we develop our capabilities and share our presentation with them? So I think we are getting there. We're getting the recognition that we are actually moving forward with this agenda.
Just going follow up. What I understand, the technology is ever changing, so it's always you need to be ahead of things. Otherwise, you can really fall behind. My follow up question is the 5G and fibre rollouts. How are we doing in the city? Because on some areas, they're still lacking the 5G, they're still lacking the fibre connection. That's one question. But the third question in mind is that when you're trying to outreach to community and faith groups, my knowledge of the community is there's community within the communities. While we're focusing on many communities, there may be some communities within the community we are not reaching. Similar with faith groups. Some major faiths we all recognize faiths, but there's some sub faiths which don't talk to each other. So how are we making sure that we are not excluding them? So then in your community, including your work, we need to make sure that we are not the main group, but we also work with subgroups.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Councillor Lal, in terms of that outreach. And you talked about some of that, you know, working with communities and getting out there and providing that support.
Yes,
So.
yeah. Digital inclusion.
On the digital inclusion stuff, you're absolutely right. The easy to reach groups are very easy. So if you hold a workshop, it's the usual suspects that always come in. So what we've been trying to do is make sure that we to the locality itself, work with that community and work with the people in that community to reach out to those that they really want, that really need the support. So in our program, what we haven't said is, here's something that we're doing. We've actually gone into the communities in those localities, say, tell us what your issues are. Tell us who you think really needs to be worked with, and we use them as the leaders in those areas so they would reach out to the groups that they know are really hard to reach. So that's how we've tried. So rather than everything centralised, and we've had examples in the past where organisations can come in and set up an office in the city centre, for example, and say, look, we'll provide free training, we'll do all of this for you. But those people never come into the city centre or refuse it, or for all sorts of reasons. And what we recognise then is that as part of that programme, and that's what we've been doing, is identifying those key players in those communities that are already reaching out to them and it's supporting and enhancing their capability. So that's on that sort of community-led approach to make sure that
5G rollout as well.
Yeah, on the 5G rollout. So we're doing a couple of things on the 5G rollout, and what we recognise with 5G, it is predicated on having fibre in the ground. So you can have 5G masts out there. So at the moment, within the West Midlands, we are the most covered region. So we have the fastest rollout and the biggest coverage across all the West Midlands, across the country in the West Midlands. So we're really up ahead in that. For Birmingham, what we've been doing is trying to accelerate that. So there is a piece of work that we're doing at the moment, which will be announced in the next few weeks, where we are inviting organisation ISPs, the internet service providers, to come and work with us, use our assets to further roll out what we're calling small cell rollouts, which will add greater speed to localities where there is a gap in the service there to do that. So that program is about to come online fairly shortly. And what we hope with that is that will really then accelerate 5G much faster in the city and make sure that we are at the forefront of some of the technology capabilities that 5G will bring.
Thank you. Councillor Deakin's asked to come back in on a point, but I'm going to make him wait because I have got a number of other councillors waiting to ask questions. And just on what you were saying, Peter, and what Councillor Francis was saying, it's great that we're being held up as shining examples, but clearly that aim is to be the best across the board. So, and I like timetables as well and things. So it would be nice just to have a sort of quite a loose time frame of how, you know, when we're aiming to get there. Because I think
digital city or digital strategy or both?
Probably both would be great if we could get it. But yeah,
we will happily send you through that. We've got when the DS went to cabinet and the DC went to cabinet, both of them have got action plans against them.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Mackie.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I think that, you know, congratulate you on moving over to Office 365. It was a good move to go there. Obviously, ahead of the COVID pandemic came along quite nicely. So Teams, in terms of for us with our digital strategy rollout, the Teams was beta when it started. It's now full-blown product. Shows you how things can move on. Of the new way of working, etc. Brilliant for Birmingham City Council. It's obviously freed a lot of buildings up as staff now working from home. Buildings, etc., either aren't used so much, don't have to be heated as much, or quite a few of them could be sold. There's obviously staff benefits from it. I'm not quite sure if the residents always see the benefit from it. You know, hearing sort of complaints from residents who are saying that, you know, if they send something into planning, they will get an email that will tell them that they've had a response. Thank you very much. We're working from home now, so you can't talk to us about it, but we'll have a look at it. And then the response times are being pushed back. Quite often being told us because people have to come in to print out. I don't know if purchase remote printers or something like that, but they're having to come in to do the printout. So I've got residents who's complaining at the moment that in August they asked about a tree, etc., in the garden they're looking to remove. They've got an email back to say that we're working from home, we'll get back to you, but response times are delayed because of that. And obviously we're on the verge of December now, and they still haven't had a response to that, where, you know, so I can see what you're saying about the city council seeing the benefits from it, and I'm supportive of the rollout of it. But I think we've just got to make sure that whatever those bottlenecks are, and if it is that we need remote printers so that people don't have to come in the office to do it, I think, you know, it'd be interesting to know what your thoughts on that are. I think as well, you made reference, because there's a lot to unpack here. When you came on with the points you're making there about the broadband, etc., from people working from home, I don't really think our broadband infrastructure is really quite up to it. You know, when we're having Teams meetings and things like that, still having a lot where people occasionally, or you know, more than occasionally, are saying that, you know, IT problems logging in, unable to put the cameras on because, you know, broadband connectivity is not quite there for them, or for whatever reason it's not working at that time. You know, I noticed that certainly in my own ward, if you go to look at OpenReach, it's said that fibre to the premises was a 2023 delivery. That's now been put back to 2024. There's no guarantee that come 23, it's not going to go back to 25. So these dates are starting to slide now. And I'm also noticing that fibre to the cabinet, you know, will all sit on fairly large chunky data rates if you're lucky enough to have them anyway. But when you go back for a new contract, those guaranteed speeds are dropping now quite considerably, sometimes from 50 down to 20 meg. So, you know, we have to be very careful if we're all working from home, making sure that the broadband infrastructure could be behind that. On IT governance, I noticed myself when I'm using my own equipment, if I log into Office 365, quite often I have to disable Microsoft's still sort of up there and it's a platform to use, but I have to disable quite a bit of the stuff that I pull.
Because you're using Apple.
No, well, it may be, but I mean, I'm glad you said that. I wasn't going to mention it, but I will now. I notice quite often going to meetings and I see everyone sat here, not today, but quite often everyone's got their Windows laptops, you know, tethered into their charging points. So, I was in a cabinet on Tuesday. I haven't charged this since Friday. You know, to me, and I'm seeing all the Windows boxes, you know, nicely burning away there.
They were the old laptops.
Well, I mean, it's whatever. This is an ARM processor in here that uses a fraction amount of the data, of the power, that you need to run an Intel processor. But even so, I'm logging into Office 365 and having to disable all the cross-tracking stuff that I've got on there, because whilst Microsoft still wants to know what we're doing, it still wants to know what our data's going. So I quite often it won't allow me to go from one page within 365 to another until I create an exception for Microsoft 365 to allow cross-tracking, so they can cross-track what I'm doing between the different sites. Now, obviously,
you think about what you're doing, but
no, it's built in as standard into Apple that it doesn't allow cross-tracking. You see,
is there a question in there?
Well, I'll tell you what, these are for you to come back to. But the other point I was going to say, obviously, on the tax and the data rate, and I think that's a really good point, because there was obviously a lot of slides here with a lot of questions coming up. I think that's a really good point for us to know that. I would just say that's quite interesting. That would be probably a better one for us to get. I don't know what you think, but a better one to give us that in private session, because if we start reporting all the attacks that we've had, it's also telling people of the attacks that we haven't noticed. You know,
yeah, and we do that, and Councillor Francis did that at audit very recently. So yeah, we do have to be careful with that. You're right, and we were very careful pre-games, because we knew we were at heightened risk about sharing that, and also our vulnerabilities. Now, you know, I'm a vulnerability, because if pushing attack. I mean, let's be honest, we're all vulnerable in that regard. But I'm confident that if that were to happen, we can strain the issue very narrowly. So that means that our services are then protected, and that's where we were not in 2020.
Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair. All I want to say, there was so much in Councillor Matthews' observations and questions, but right at the beginning you talked about how as a council we respond to the need of our citizens, and that to my mind is the crucial part of this, because that's why we're here, that's our raison d'etre. So my mission, or the mission of this team, is to make sure that we respond in the best possible way, in the best possible time, in a way that's coherent and meaningful to people out there. If we could just note that as a cabinet, that's key for me. Sorry, I don't know whether my colleagues want to.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and actually just going back to the point that Councillor Mackie made about officers working from home, and I've got to say that you used planning as an example, but I emailed planning enforcement over an issue 2 days ago, and they came out and had a look at that issue for me yesterday. So, you know, just because they're working from home doesn't mean, and I know that the out of office sort of response saying I'm working at home needs to be addressed, and that's been raised. But I don't see myself, problems with officers working from home.
No, I think planning enforcement, I'm quite willing to give a shout out for them, because the planning enforcement officer that I've got covers my ward is absolutely brilliant. And, he's out and about and he uses those. It's more about residents interfacing with planning itself per se, or say if you want to get a trade officer to come out and have a look, the response times of that definitely do seem to be extending. And I think we've just got to make sure that, that everyone sees the benefits of this rollout, not just us.
Sure. A lot of that is with the customer service stuff, isn't it?
Right. That may be an area scrutiny in the sort of phase 2 elements on task and finish. I mean, I'm aware of that out of our email thing. That was clearly a mistake and it's not right. Most people are not home workers. They're flexible workers. And we're putting a lot of time and effort into making sure that they really get that, because that means give them the tools to do their job, but customer comes first. So that's still absolutely a work in progress, and I'm sure you'll see that through the work we've been doing on customer charter. And there will be still people who, put their looking after their dog or picking their children up or whatever it is first, because they've got the flexibility now that they didn't have before. But I can certainly tell you that the financial benefits are coming through to the cities. Residents might not necessarily see it, because obviously there are all sorts of issues there. But if we don't extract whatever cash we can from these unused buildings, then that goes into our overall medium-term financial plan. So, I think we'll see that. In terms of the broadband, I think it's a really good point. I think that's an area that I could talk for hours on it. I would say,
Peter. Not today.
Our analysis, and I know Scrutiny have had OpenReach and they've had Virgin Media in here. Remember, Councillor Rice very clearly, when he was chairing, brought them in. Our analysis of this market is that dates are slipping. By constituency, we are slipping in terms of abilities. There's 2 wards, I think, that have got very strong full fibre rollout to the premise. Most of them don't, and that's not likely to change. And there are some very deep pockets is the wrong language, but there are parts of the city that are not going to get served, particularly city centre and associated enterprise zones, which is a concern for economic growth. And so the business case that we are working on, shared the detail just this week, actually, with Councillor Francis, is suggesting that we need to intervene in this market, as other cities have done. Greenwich, I know that's part of London, Transport for London, of using their Liverpool City Region, Coventry, Solihull, Wolverhampton, Sunderland are all taking steps to intervene into this market, because the commercial rollouts are not happening fast enough. And we think we can help that.
It was a certain bit, a few years ago now, but they paid for fibre to go into the business that's in Sutton, because it just wasn't even on the horizon, you know.
And government have invested very heavily, but they've moved it to the rural areas. But that means parts of our city aren't going to get any attention from the commercial rollout. So I'm very happy to do that. That might be particularly in the economy over in Scrutiny, because that's where it will play out in terms of its value to the economic development of the city. I think that's probably. I can't really comment on the Office 365 issues. I'm sorry, I don't understand the.
I can show. It sits there and spins until you switch off. Switch off cross tracking. The page suddenly.
I don't think I've had anybody else say that to me, so I won't just say it's Apple.
It's anything. I could do it for you on a Windows browser. If you switch off cross tracking, it won't allow you.
I think that might be a physical demonstration outside of this meeting.
Yes, I take that in. Thank you.
You know, we're always here to help. We need to make sure you can function effectively.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to call Councillor Yip next, but I just wanted to say on the you talked about the financial positives of flexible working, but we also need to recognise the other positives for our workforce around flexible working. It's not just about saving money; it's about the overall mental and well-being of our workforce, and that makes a big difference. Did you want to talk about, just say something about the possibility of that item coming to scrutiny? But I have got Councillor Yip first.
I'll see that here.
Councillor Yip.
Thank you, Chair. It's just two very quick questions. Going back to the presentation, seems a long time ago now. Very clear strategies, very clear vision. I appreciate that it's quite a big task that you've tried to roll out. But the 2 points, so firstly, I mean, you mentioned in terms of fibre and 5G and the infrastructure. So I suppose these are very much in the hands of other people outside of the control of council. So what real influence do we have in trying to get these partners on board to try and deliver to an accelerated timeframe? And then the second point linked to that, and I suppose this is for you, Cabinet Member, is just in terms of specific targets and objectives and timelines. So I mean, you asked the question yourself in terms of what time to deliver this. There's a really one. I'm a big fan of specific targets and timelines. Otherwise, don't set goals and think.
Just to correct you, the risk, but I will share them.
Thank you. If you're able to share the specific points and objectives that you hope to achieve and by when, that would be great. I stand corrected. Apologies.
I take the view that targets are very important, because then we know what we've got to do, how we've got to get it, and if we're not getting there, we can look at ways of getting there. Thank you for raising that. Do you want to pick up on 5G?
So the 5G, Raj has really covered it, because we think we can use our assets to help with the small cell rollout. The physics of 5G means that you need to have more stations, radio base stations. So we have lots of lampposts. Those potentially can be utilised as an asset, for example, to help with that in the right locations, obviously. In terms of the fibre, I sort of covered it earlier. We have very little influence with Openreach or Virgin, who are the two primary providers. But we spend a lot of money on networking in the council for its own purposes, libraries, the offices. Many authorities are taking the advantage of their spend over a prolonged period and saying, well, there's an asset that I can bring in, a new third party who can leverage that asset and build full fibre. And that's the core proposition that we're working on now. So that doesn't accelerate what Openreach choose to do, but it puts more competition into the market in an area that is underserved from a competition.
It'd be good to see how we are fully leveraging that, because as you say, council is the largest authority in Europe. It'd be really good.
That's absolutely part of that business case. Absolutely part of that business case to do that. And welcome some comment on that. See what you think on that.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to just try and speed us up, because I am conscious of the time. So I'm going to take questions from Councillor Idris, Councillor Suleiman for you to answer, and then I'm going to call Councillor Deakin because he wanted to come back on something. And then I've got a question as well. So Councillor Idris.
Thanks, Chair. My question is around landline telephone numbers. I've been experiencing from the last 2 years and still experiencing when you ring those landline numbers, you don't get through. And even sometimes when you get the emails from the officers with the landline numbers, and when you ring that number, you don't get through. And I get complaints from residents as well. And second question is around it's about
You're waiting so long.
about the phishing emails. How secure we are, if you happen to click a phishing email through negligence, how much risk there is that, the systems could be compromised, or we got a secure system where, it cannot be hacked.
Well, phishing emails, just to come straight back on that one, we are still at risk from that, but the impact, i.e. someone downloads something to encrypt something, might just be here, might be just this physical device and doesn't actually go anywhere else. And that's the kind of de-risking we've been doing on the impact. If I said to you that you could potentially in 2020 go right into our data centers and encrypt our backups, that was where we were. I'm being very honest with everyone. That could be where we were. No, that's not where we are now. We're absolutely secure.
On the landline.
Yes. That is not right. And we need to fix that. Part of that is structural. Part of that is behaviour. The behaviour is don't put a phone number or put a phone number that people can contact you. The whole purpose of that is so you can be contacted. So there's a behavioural point there. Again, I'm sure you'll come out in customer service work. But there are some technical changes that will be coming in the new year so that a lot of people are using Teams and they can use that as a proper phone. And therefore, when they put their phone number out, it will ring them like it should do. So when they are like a planning officer, they put the phone number on, they can be called and it will come to him as well as potentially you if they choose him. So that's
through the team you can connect it, but through normal system you can't. Through mobile or internal numbers.
Yeah, well, that brings all that together. But we've had to do some technical changes to make that all work so that people are contactable and properly contactable to those that they serve.
Clearly, there's changes being made, Councillor Idris, but we're not there quite yet. So I think we need to keep an eye on that one. Councillor Suleiman.
Thank you, and thank you, for all this work that we're doing, and I think it's fantastic that we're kind of moving with the times, and I think it's a really exciting, sector, for us to be looking at. So my two questions are, firstly, obviously, a lot of members on my committee are really passionate about young people and jobs, and we've got high unemployment rate. How do we see this digital strategy improving unemployment and matching, sort of the skills shortage that we have in the digital sector to our residents that are unemployed? So how do we see this strategy as filling that sort of gap? The second one was you mentioned about driving performance in terms of how the data will be used. So I'm quite interested in terms of that, what that will look like in terms of, is it going to be used to decide where we focus our resources, or is it going to be in terms of how we manage our staff? Because you hear some kind of like horror stories about in certain, areas of employment where sort of data is used to kind of micromanage staff and kind of like really, like where you hear about call centers where, or you have to do a certain number of calls in this many hours, that kind of thing. So, I'm just like, I think some people kind of like are a bit wary of how we use data in that sense. One of the things, sorry, I know I said I was going to say two questions, just from Councillor Idris's point. Like in my other job, which is also in the public sector, we have to have digital training, security training every single year. It used to be every 3 years, but every single year it's a must, because we're dealing with so much like data and information. So I think it's really important that people are kind of updated on this, because kind of, I think after a time people kind of become a bit like relaxed, and I think it's because it's so important. I think, I don't know whether the council have that for their staff, but I think certainly it needs to be extended to councillors and staff, that it's your responsibility as well to ensure that you're up to date on this kind of training. And we have like a digital sort of training, which is really good. So you can do it in your own time. Well, your manager can give you a bit of time and you go away and you complete that training and you go through all of this, because, a lot of times people don't have time to, attend meetings or, like programs. So it's really useful to have that. Like if you can just go click on you're updating all your, the information, and there may be new things. Obviously in the digital sector, there's always new things. So that might be something.
We do that.
Yeah.
So we do offer that training. Are expected to do it, and we do it online. And we do track how people are doing. We're taking the opportunities to make sure that all hangs together as part of our overall learning package for the council, but we do have the same operation. Raj, can you pick up the the employment and skill shortages job, but on the performance and the efficiency? I suppose I look at it on the basis that people are paying our wages, so we perform. We expect them to be efficient. Because yes, I do manage the people in the contact centre closely, but not to the point that they are stressed and their health and well-being is affected, because actually that doesn't help the customers, let alone helping the individual concerned. We're doing more on this, more as in efficiency. The field worker, for example, gives the managers of caretakers the first time the ability to see what their teams are doing. Now, I think that's a good thing, and we spend a lot of time with caretakers, just as an example, to bring them along and help them understand how this is going to help them do their job and keep them safe, actually, as well. Because the other thing that we've been worried about is people going to properties and not knowing that there could be at risk if they go there, dangerous dog or something like that. So if we bring the staff with us, which we have done on that one, then actually people embrace it. But it is a change, and that data that we're then going to get from that, yeah, of course we're going to share it, of course we're going to manage it, of course we're going to interrogate it and use it. But I think that's what customers expect of us, or ratepayers, put it that way, because they're paying our wages and expect some performance, but done in the right way, clearly.
Thanks, Peter. Raj, did you want to come in briefly?
I'm sorry.
You're absolutely right with the young people. I mean, there are future opportunities for us, and what we've been trying to do clearly is involve them in some of the activities that we're doing at a community-based level as well. So part of the work that we're doing around the community-led innovation is looking at how we improve youth engagement, get their ideas in a similar way we've done with, I think, Match My Project, where there is something for communities to put forward an idea, and then there's match funding opportunity, and we're trying to do the same thing for young people, and young people right from the ages of school age, to get them to be more involved, get their ideas further forward, get them more engaged, and get them to start identifying opportunities for them. And we're trying to develop that capability that will match those ideas to job opportunities, new employers, to see that's a really good idea. How do we take that forward? That's one thing. But the other thing that we are doing is working with entrepreneurs out there and seeing what kind of application would really inspire the young people to get engaged. And I won't name them, but there's one particular one that, gives young people an opportunity to taste what it's like to be in a particular job, for example. So the employer gets an idea to find out whether this person's the right person. That young person gets an idea to find out whether that's the right job for them. So they'll provide 6 months, 3 months type of opportunity for them to get that experience, so they get the right match. And that's a really good opportunity for young people who don't really know what they want to do to be able to support that. But we've also worked with partners as well, and a big organisation within Birmingham has started understanding that not every child wants to go through a formal education route. So they've started putting on courses, training. This is outside the school curriculum to really inspire them. We've been working with them to promote that and develop those kind of capabilities to do that. And the other thing we want to do and start doing is really create something like an aspiration for young people, so that young people have the platform to talk about the types of careers they're actually doing, and like almost like a library of aspiration for them, and get young voices talking to other people and get them to start thinking about the type of opportunities, because it's not a lack of jobs out there, it's a lack of awareness and lack of understanding of the types of new careers that are open to young people, and getting them to be made aware of that. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. I'm just going to finish off before we both get killed. Just to say, I hope what you've heard this morning has been helpful. Clearly, we can't do any of it on our own, and we're absolutely committed to working with a range of different public and private sector partners to make sure that the service, both internally and externally, is the best possible one in the digital landscape. So is it all right to finish there? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's actually
nodding.
And so Francis, and Raj, thank you for that. But I think if Councillor Sullivan and the committee have, can find some space on their work programme, it could be a really interesting strand to follow up and have a bit more detail. Councillor Deakin, be really quick. Final point.
Just creating interest on the planning committee, I don't think I'm clearing on this question. When it comes to 5G masts, you will know that they often come to planning committee for approval. Is that a challenge in sometimes broadening 5G coverage, because there is always the risk that from objections, but also from councillors, may refuse.
It's a very sensitive area, isn't it, 5G masts?
I don't think we can deal with the 5G masts question.
No, we can't.
We're not planners. My wife is, but I'm not. So I can't really cover
She's
it.
always right.
And she is always right, yes.
No,
It's on this topic. It's just trying to be helpful, but no, okay.
no, we've got to move on. I'm really sorry. It's been really interesting. Any input or other questions we've got, we can do by email. I've got a couple of questions. I'm going to email them, Peter, because we do have to move on. So thank you very much. It's been a really interesting 45 minutes. So thank you. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to sit and listen to the rest of it.
Right, we are going to move on to the next agenda item once we've been able to do a bit of musical chairs. And very pleased to welcome O'Leary Roberts to the committee this morning to give us an update from her perspective on the communication strategy. And O'Leary is the Assistant Director of Communications for the City Council.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, and I'm going to head straight over and let you go.
Yeah, that's fine. I know we're quite short of time. I just want to introduce my colleague, Alison Roberts, who is our Head of Communications, so she's my deputy, has been with us for a few years now and led through the Commonwealth Games activity that we've done. So she's here just to follow on to give you some examples of where we've been taking the strategy and putting it into practice. I will try and be quick because I know we've circulated the presentation to you in advance. There are quite a few slides, so I will canter through them because I suspect you've probably got questions and rather spend the time focusing on than listening to me talking.
That'd be wonderful.
That's okay?
Yeah.
I don't know, are we putting the presentation up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I'll start just by giving you a quick overview. We are the centralised corporate communications team. The council decentralised its comms team before I started. We're quite a small team, and we handle all of the corporate communication the organisation does. There are some elements of communication support that sit outside in the outside of my team, but they work to my team. So, for example, the CAS has its own comms and marketing officers, but they very much are integrated into my team. It's not part of the central comms team. They're funded by a different work stream, but they are also integrated into my team, if that makes sense. So there are some elements of bits and pieces outside of the corporate centre. We support the organisation both internally and externally to communicate, and we have kind of, I'll move forward to the next one. We have come two main objectives. One of them is to be clear and consistent in our communications and be creative and try and help the authority communicate as one organisation. So hopefully you will have seen that coming through now as we start to support the corporate plan and through the Be Bold Birmingham branding. And then also we are here to support the delivery of planned and proactive strategic communications. So when I say strategic, what we are doing is looking at the corporate plan and then identifying through with directors how we can best support them through communications to ensure that we are doing what is in that plan strategically. So it might be like managing down demand, increasing awareness, that kind of thing. So we're trying very much to tailor the communications that we are doing now to support the delivery of the new corporate campaign. Move forward one. So we are developing a more strategic approach. So as we have now got the corporate plan, what we're doing is we are aligning the campaigns that we are running as a team to what's in that plan, and I'll move on to that in a bit. And what we are doing is using a ROSE principle, which is around research, objectives, strategy, implementation, and evaluation. So each piece of work that we're now trying to deliver for the authority is based very much on research at the very beginning, so looking at audiences, looking at what we're trying to achieve and how best to achieve that, rather than doing a very scattergun approach and hoping that whatever we do lands. And then as we move forward, we'll work with the departments on what their objectives are, and then we implement the strategy, and then we very much have at the core of all of this our evaluation. So what we're trying to do is making sure that what we do works, and if it does, how can we take those learnings into a new piece of activity and a new campaign. We have now got a forward planner of campaign activity. It's very much in its infancy. You want to just move forward then? It's our kind of grid that we discuss at corporate level with our corporate directors around what's coming up and how we're supporting different campaigns. So we have a kind of forward look. We are looking very much, as I've said, I'm kind of repeating myself, around the why, the what, the where. So what is it we're trying to do? How are we going to get there? And what do we need to do in order to achieve that? And we are using insights. As we have more information coming through the City Observatory, that is really helping us to understand our audiences. I know one of the kind of key things that was kind of mentioned at the beginning when I was asked to come here was around digital inclusion. I'm not going to be able to answer all of that in this presentation, because as we move forward with more insight and more data through the City Observatory, it will help us to tailor our communications more, which means we'll be able to address that issue around digital inclusion. But what we do is we look at what we have currently, and we ensure that what we are doing matches the audience that we know we're trying to achieve, to reach. So we are trying to take that strategic data-led approach. It will get better as we get more knowledge through the City Observatory. Kind of covered off audiences through that, and we'll come back to that through some of the examples that Alison is going to talk through. We have a number of channels that we can use when we're thinking about how we're going to communicate, and we pick the channels depending on the audience that we're trying to attract or trying to engage with or trying to inform. So that could be anything from doing something that's purely media-led through our local and national press. It could be something that's done specifically on a social media platform, because we know that's where our audience is. One of the platforms we've been growing a lot recently is our TikTok account. We know that really attracts a young audience. So we really focus on youth engagement through that, and where we think that will appeal more. It's kind of a fun, more engaging platform than, say, our Twitter account, which we know is used much more for information and for people looking for news items, etc. So as we look at what it is we're trying to achieve, we do try very hard to match the channel and the knowledge, the understanding of the audience that's behind that channel to what we do. And sometimes when we have the money in particular, we will very much look at outside of the digital platform as well, and how can we do things that are out and about. Obviously, during COVID in the last couple of years, we've been restricted on doing that. Before COVID, with budget engagement, for example, we were very much out on high streets talking about our budget, talking about where the money goes. We had to move that all online during the COVID period, but now as we are much more open again as a society, we are definitely looking at how we go back out into physical spaces. I'll quickly touch on Be Bold Be Birmingham. I'm hoping that all of you have seen this. It was everywhere during the Commonwealth Games. So if you haven't, then I'm pretty sure you haven't been in the city centre. It was developed as a civic pride legacy from the Commonwealth Games. So we wanted something that was our brand, that was separate to the Commonwealth Games brand, something we own going forward, because obviously the brand that's connected to the Commonwealth Games was owned by the Commonwealth Games and actually was owned just for the Games. We wanted something which articulated what we were doing with our communities, the legacy and the pride that we wanted everybody to have in the city post-Games. We came up with Be Bold with Birmingham in-house, so everything you see has been developed, designed, created by the internal communications team, well, the team within BCC. It was based on focus groups that we did with residents. We did an engagement with them. We did some focus groups with staff as well, trying to tease out what language they felt we should be focusing on, what they felt was pride in the city, what made them proud of being from the city and being either adopted or born and bred here. So this is how we came to Bold Birmingham. We took it forward into this very colourful brand because we wanted really to draw on all of the words that were said to us during the focus groups about being out there, being a bit more punchy about Birmingham and everything we've got to be proud of, and not so much this kind of shying away, a little bit meek in the corner. So we really wanted the statement of Bold Birmingham to be supported by this bright, engaging brand that you can kind of capture and see and is in your face when you walk around the city. So that's Be Bold with Birmingham. It is now the golden thread through everything that we are planning on doing. You will have heard about the corporate plan. It went to full council not very long ago. We are now moving forward with how we integrate our communications and support the corporate plan through Be Bold Birmingham themes. Fiona, if you don't mind, I know you're noting, can you? Sorry, I'm trying to be really good. And here's a bit of information behind, where we got to with it as being an aspiration, state of mind and ambition. So it's much more than just 4 words that we're sticking on everything on our email signatures. We want to bring it to life now. So as we go forward, post-Games, we will be using Be Bold Birmingham. We are also very mindful that we are now in a different place to where we were 6 months ago. We had the autumn statement yesterday. There is a lot of things that will be coming down the road which aren't so shiny, aren't so exciting, aren't so in your face as Be Bold Birmingham is. And I'll talk about that at the end, or Ali will as well. We are trying to bring some of that into the campaign that we're running around cost of living. And we are very mindful of the kind of, not the brashness, but the excitement that comes with Be Bold, and then what we need to communicate and engage with and how people might be feeling. So we aren't unaware of that. And we will definitely be very mindful as we move forward about each individual campaign and how we marry the two up. This is just to give you an overview. You will all be aware of the 5 Be Bold narratives and top line kind of themes within the corporate plan. We will now and are now developing campaigns that sit underneath all of these. So when we are doing work with the public health team, all of their activities around kind of bolder, healthier, they now have bolder, healthier champions. Their Twitter account very much has the look and feel of the Be Bold Birmingham Bolder, Healthier campaign. When we're doing something that's around being safe in the city, we'll use the colour palette and the language and the look and feel of the Bolder, Safer campaign, so that residents can see when we're doing something how it all marries up and links back to the main overall objectives of the authority. So it's a bit like how you know that a certain brand in the private sector is delivering something. So if Virgin are doing a finance package versus a mobile package, you know that it's all part of the same top brand, which is Virgin, but underneath it there are different kind of products. That's what we are using, these different colour palettes and themes, so that everybody knows what we're doing kind of links back to that overall objective. It's us, it's Birmingham City Council, but each campaign has its own different feel so that it can have some flexibility. And then just to touch on evaluation. So we do evaluate everything. This is just a bit of top line on our social media. As we have been going forward, we have really grown our platforms. We do focus, I think, more on social media than we do on kind of face-to-face and traditional marketing. mostly because it's much more cost effective for us. We don't have a huge budget. Some of the campaigns I will talk to you about to do with COVID and to do with Commonwealth Games were supplemented a lot by budget from government. So what you're going to see from the outcomes from those two campaigns, just bear in mind that we had extra money given to us from government, especially around COVID, to really boost the type of activity that we could do. So what we have done there is kind of a bit more above and beyond what we're normally capable of doing, the amount of money that we have. But we have really focused on growing our social media accounts so that we can really use them for engagement and really reach the people that are online and can access them, so that we are making sure that we are doing as much as we can in a very cost-effective way to begin with. The next two slides are just an example of how we are evaluating. So we have slides, dashboards produced every month. We can drill down by campaign, by theme, by service area, so that we know what we're doing is hitting people, reaching people. Is it being picked up positively, negatively? Do we need to change the language that we're using? Do we need to do it in a slightly different way? Are people finding it something that they don't feel appealing? So one of the examples of this, when Anna talks about it, is at the beginning of COVID, there was obviously a very big national campaign that's coming out of government. We recognised partway through that people weren't identifying with that national campaign, and we needed to do something very much specific to Birmingham that would resonate with Birmingham people, and they were doing something to protect their city, not just because the government was telling them. So we created a very specific Birmingham-based campaign called Noble, which we'll talk about. And again, that was developed as part of evaluation. So we looked and saw what was resonating, what wasn't. How do we make sure it does appeal? Because if it doesn't, then people aren't going to listen to it. The other issue is we need really communications campaigns we're doing. Again, it's just another example of the type of evaluation we look at. If you move forward one slide. So we also look at our media coverage. Media is a big part of one of the channels that we need to use to reach our residents, and also not just people in Birmingham, but also nationally. One of the other kind of key audiences we have is government, the kind of the placemakers and shape makers of what we're doing in the city and how we are perceived and seen by other people, so our reputation. We look up the media coverage that we have. We make sure if there is an area where we are receiving maybe a lot of negative coverage, we'll link back in the service area and say, you know, how can we help you with this? How can we support you? Is this really an issue that we need to be picking up and identifying? And we actually, that kind of fits in with the customer services stuff you've heard about previously, I know, with Wendy. When there is an influx of noise on social media around a particular service, then that obviously is an indicator that there is something that needs to be looked at, and then we help the service area to identify and see and flag what's coming through to us. Same way as there is an uplift of calls coming through to the contact centre about a particular issue. So we try and use the data that we receive as well back into the service to help them. I will stop talking now, and I'll hand over to Ali. She can run me through a couple of case studies, and then we'll have some fun questions.
Thank you. I can skip forward one more time. So as Larry mentioned, the main campaign that we ran during COVID was called Noble, and we created that based on evidence and feedback from residents to tell us that they weren't connecting with the national campaign. They were sort of, I think, being blindsided by it because it was sort of everywhere, and we were really trying to focus down on actually what it meant to be from Birmingham and what we wanted to protect as Birmingham residents. So Noble was created, and we started rolling that out in, I'm trying to get my notes right, September 2020, I think it was. And we saw it really connect with residents, both through evaluation that we had through our digital platforms, but then we also noticed that we needed to hit people that didn't have digital capabilities. So we put signs up in parks, we went to supermarkets, we really looked at where the biggest footfall of our audience was going to be, and printed and physical assets that people could actually see. There was a phone number available if people wanted that connection, or there was the website, obviously, if they did have a mobile phone or desktop with them. one of the best things we did was digital, and it was called Google Display Ads. And what we did, we actually translated into the top 9 languages, I think it was, in Birmingham. So we created different ads advising and sort of reassuring people on what they needed to do during COVID. And they were some of the biggest areas of engagement and one of the lowest costs that we did. And we targeted rewards. So where we saw a rise in COVID cases or where the vaccine wasn't being uptaken, we then targeted those rewards through paid advertising on Facebook or through, again, Google Display. And as sort of we've said throughout, really trying to focus on our audience and making sure that they get the right message at the right time. During the games, if we can skip on one, Fiona, we sort of started the games, I suppose, during COVID. So we had to take on a similar approach. So when we were doing our community engagement around the grants funding, we again learned from COVID. We did our signs in parks, we did posters in libraries, sort of again really where that footfall was going. And we sort of really drove Be Bobby Birmingham with that as well. And then we went out and connected with our communities as well. So we went out and spoke to as many wards as we could, really, created 2 sort of specific campaigns around our communities and what they were proud to be offering in Birmingham. So obviously slightly different and more exciting topic than COVID. But by doing that, we were able to sort of speak to different demographics and really showcase what our community look like and what they do in Birmingham as well. And then finally, the last sort of case study is Helping Brum, which, as Larry highlighted, is our cost of living campaign. So we came to the table, we decided Be Bobby Birmingham wasn't right. It was very exciting, very bold, and actually with Helping Brum and the cost of living, we needed to be a bit more compassionate and a bit more sensitive to people's needs. So Helping Brum really highlights the resources that are already available. So, making sure that people are aware of one of our contact centres is open for a long period of time, making sure people are getting the right benefits, highlighting where the warm welcome spaces are, where food banks are, and really making sure that people know. And then secondly, what we're doing as a council to go above and beyond. So, where are we putting extra resource in, where people really can even physically go and get that support they need. The campaign's been running for about 2 months now, both online and offline, and it's doing really well. We've got a 3% engagement rate, which when compared to COVID that ran for just over a year, that was around 4.8%. So sort of very, very close to matching that and then succeeding on it. And again, we're going to be upping this even further. So we're going to be doing supermarket digital screens again. We're going to be doing radio advertising on local community radio. We're doing the top 10 translations in Birmingham for a leaflet that we've had published, and it's going to be printed. We're also doing that leaflet in Braille, and we're going to be doing a sign language video to really help everybody, as many people as we can, in different translations, and trying to really reach all of our different demographics that we've got in Birmingham. I think that's everything.
Very quick, Canterbury.
Yeah. No, I am really grateful for that. I mean, the presentation was really comprehensive anyway, and I hope members, really took time to digest the information that you presented to us, because that was really useful. And, there were questions that were springing into my mind, but they were answered. So I will not have to ask many questions, indicating from members, so Councillor Mackie and Councillor Suleiman, and then I've got some questions as well. Thank you.
I'll be brief because I realise I probably cost you 2 questions last time, so I'll be brief. First of all, I just want to say congratulations on the No Bull campaign. I thought that was really good. You learn things through these things. I assumed that everyone would just go to government to get their data, and even on my little Facebook page, I put things on about, my ward stats. And people were found were chasing me up if I was a bit late getting them on the next week. They were asking for them. And so, no, congratulations on those campaigns, because obviously it definitely filled the gap in the market there. you wouldn't have thought would have been there. The two little points I was going to make was just about sort of Twitter and YouTube, about the sort of branding of it, and the sense that I think our main Twitter handle on here is BHAM, and all the new ones are BCC. I don't know if it's too late to get those to sort of align, because it's it's not massively intuitive, if you know what I mean. And the other one was just our YouTube channels. The branding in those is different between the ward and the council, which I just noticed when I first started. My OCD kicking in. It was nice if it all looked branded as BCC. That's it.
No, they're points. We are just about to do, so we have just done a kind of audit of all of our social media accounts. We actually have 120 different social media accounts that aren't owned by us, but the council has. So you have Country Parks have their individual, Licky Hills have their own Twitter account, their own Instagram. You have various different parts of the organisation that also have their own socials. We've just finished doing a bit of an audit of all of that. We've started with our own corporate accounts, and we're now taking forward a strategy on how we bring all of that consistency in. And actually now we've got Revolve in Birmingham. I think for the first time since I've been here 6 years, this is the first time we've got something that is a corporate plan that's collective, that we can stand behind and gives us a theme that we can really use for the next 4 to 5 years. So we are just in the process actually of looking at all of that and then implementing a strategy and really thinking about the individual social media accounts that we've got and how we bring that brand in and give them consistency. So, and YouTube is one of those areas that I think we've slightly had on the back burner, and we focused a lot on the others, but really now needs to come to the forefront, and it really needs a bit of a, not a cleanse, but we need to look at it and understand which videos are front and centre and really kind of engaging and people really want to see, and which are ones that we're just putting there, because we also have to do some work with directors about, they think if they've done a video, it just goes on the YouTube channel and that's it. They can tick a box and they've communicated something, and they haven't. If it's not very engaging, if it's too long, it doesn't have the right kind of information at the front and centre. So we do need to do some work around YouTube. So we are aware of that, and I'm kind of glad you've noticed it as well, because it sort of feeds into what we already knew, but it does need to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Silliman. Thank you. I'll try and be quick, but thank you for that. I think that was, I mean, the Be Bold, Be Birmingham, I thought that was really good. That sort of colourful, I thought it was really, really excellent. I mean, my question is around bringing us back to sort of digital inclusivity. I mean, I know there's, like in my ward, there's like, we've got a number of residents who still kind of are not quite there. I mean, you find, I think, with some people who are over 50, they've kind of picked up on the social media sort of things. They can do that, but in terms of like accessing services and forms and things like that, they struggle a bit. Some people may struggle with that sort of a bit still. In terms of like, because the leaflet, the targeted leafleting. So for something like important like the cost of living crisis, is there any plan in place for, like, if we know there's certain areas, like for example my ward, there's particular areas within there that would benefit from, if we've got vulnerable residents who would prefer like a leaflet about cost of living support that's available, that might not sort of pick up on online. The other thing was on the point of Be Bold, Be Birmingham. How do we celebrate that sort of moving forward when we're going to be in very difficult times? And I think for me, it's our volunteers who've been, our volunteer groups, our residents who really pulled together through, one of the biggest crises that we've ever faced. And I think it's maybe focusing on them and really celebrating the spirit of Birmingham, and that is we pull together in the times of crisis. Thank you.
Thanks, Leary. I know that, it's already been mentioned that the Helping Brem is looking at doing very much what they did in the COVID campaign in terms of leaflets in, the 9 top languages and hard copy material going out to residents. And I'm sure that if we've got areas that we're representing that we know, has a population that would be much more accessible in terms of hard copy, we'll pass that on to you. But if you just pick up the other question.
just on the leaflets as well. So we have had quite a lot produced, and what we're starting to do is give them out to our frontline staff to give them out when they're going into the properties or going into the space where we know that they've got vulnerable residents. So we're very much using our colleagues in housing. We will be in adult social care as well, so that when they're in, and also for you all as well. So we're producing a member pack. There'll be physical copies of that available, so that if you are in your ward surgeries and somebody comes to you and they're asking you questions, you've got that physical leaflet that you can give them. So we are trying to use cost-effective ways, but ways that we know get to the most vulnerable in the city, first and foremost. And then we are also looking where there may be gaps, where there might be the isolated who don't necessarily come into contact with our services, quite independent, can manage to live on their own, but are isolated and probably could do with some extra support. So there is layers on what we're doing around the physical. On the Big Bold with Birmingham and how we manage the civic pride and the taking that kind of how we all felt in the summertime, which I think everyone will agree was amazing, because it was just so nice to see our city in that, being reflected in that way, the way that we know it is. That's something we're working on at the moment. There are things that are happening. So we've obviously won the Euro Champs. There is some of the kind of major event stuff that's still going to be continuing through the city. We'll definitely be linking in and using the Be Bold brand for that. And that's where also we're working with directors now around what's the kind of, not the good news, but what are the things that are coming out that we need to still focus on. The city is doing, more around supporting its residents, but there are other things that are happening, and how can we make sure through the corporate plan we're definitely bringing those front and centre and using Be Bold with Birmingham. I think the next couple of months will be a challenge. We're very aware of that. And it might just be for now, the tone of it does change slightly. But then when we come back out and we're more in summertime and people might feel a bit more positive, that's where we might start using it a bit more again. But it's not, I don't have a complete answer for you, I think is what I was saying.
No, and Illyria, that's really useful, because I remember probably our first meeting, not formal scrutiny, but with the different directors and the chief executive, that actually raised that whole Be Bold, facing a cost of living crisis and how we can be compassionate and sensitive. And I'm really pleased to see that that was taken up and is informing our plan. So thank you for that. I'm going to bring in Councillor Idris, Councillor Lal, very quickly, please, to get very brief questions that haven't already been answered.
Thanks, Chair. When we had very successful Commonwealth Games, as a post-legacy in the last 3 months, I know it's a short time, but any post-legacy achievements in the last 3 months as a result of the Commonwealth Games?
Specific ones, I can't think of, there are some, I haven't got that in my head. I know that we've done, and Ali, you might know actually more, we've done stuff around distributing out the some of the assets. Yes, so we've got so all of the sort of Perry's, the hashtag B2022 signs, things like that, they're all starting actually to go out into the public domain at the moment. I know that that's being worked on by the programme team, who's still in the build.
The bull was attracting huge crowds, and any update on that? Where is it going and when is it going?
I think it's more about, isn't it, putting out the messaging around if there are opportunities and legacies that we already know about. Is putting out that communications, and I think that's what you're saying that is happening by your team.
Yeah, so my team very much are informing people when there's stuff that's going on. As we've, and European Champs is one of the kind of the legacies, isn't it? That was announced last week. The very specific legacy stuff doesn't sit with my team. We just get involved and support as it comes on. And I know there has been some stories coming out around legacy. So not just around Perry's and things, but the actual physical stuff, the sporting equipment has been distributed out to community groups. There's the money that was distributed. We are linked in with those community groups. So when there's stuff to talk about around where money has been spent, then we will get involved in that. The actual legacy, the Commonwealth Games, doesn't sit with me. So I suspect there's probably a question that somebody like Graham Vetch should answer.
Yeah. And we can send that to Councillor Deakin and officers to answer that specific question. Councillor Lyle.
Thank you. My question is, this P-Board Birmingham brand, how is being recognised? How well is it being recognised by non-social media users? So if you ask somebody in the street, will they be able to relate to this brand?
So that's.
And second question is, I'm very impressed with your 277K social media users. And do we know how many and duplication among that? I mean, we have a safe person have different so many social media accounts. So there could be a safe person using Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. So are we quadruple counting or triple counting or multiple counting in the
analytics?
So on the Revolve Birmingham recognition, brand recognition, that is something we're building now. So it obviously came out in a very crowded space because there was a lot of the Commonwealth Games activity happening. So it was running alongside a very big brand that had a lot of money put into it. And we launched it with kind of slightly less money and in a space that was already quite crowded. What we are doing now is we're building that brand. And that's all of the activity that we're doing over the next year, 2 years. It's a long-term program around building Revolve Birmingham. We are using it in everything we can do, and part of the activity that we're doing is looking at bringing everything under that umbrella brand. So where you have pieces of activity that are happening in certain directorates that might not necessarily have that branding on it, we're going to them and saying we need to now bring that into the corporate centre so it looks and feels the same as the rest of the corporate brand. As we do that, and the more we do that, the more we'll build the recognition. We do focus groups, and we will do focus groups around Revolve Birmingham. I'm going out and asking people, do you recognise it? Do you feel proud of it? Does it resonate with you? What more could we do to get you to understand what it's for? And that is what we'll continue to do. On the question around duplication of social media accounts, we don't know every single one of those kind of followers on Twitter or on Instagram. What we can do is delve a bit down into the areas, the type of person, and we can build a picture of them. So what we're doing through the social media audit that we've started and we're now turning into a strategy, we can look and see what is the majority of the people that follow us on Instagram, are they of a certain age, certain demographic? So should we tailor campaigns around whatever resonates to them on there? We won't necessarily know if they're not already on Twitter or Instagram and on LinkedIn. They probably are. Most people are on every platform, but they might not follow us, or they might not go to us on Twitter, but they will go to us on Instagram. So we're just trying to find that information out now, but we won't know for sure if there's absolute duplication because it's quite tricky to delve that deep in. But what we really try to do is take the audience understanding and then match that to the campaign.
Thank you. I mean, that's a good point actually around, people that are on social media tend to be on more than one platform. Because I know that I am, although I'm not on TikTok, you'll be pleased to hear, and yeah, and on TikTok, I mean, why do you think that big increase in TikTok activity has happened? Is that because we've only recently created a TikTok account?
We've only just created it for the game. And we recognise that with growing platform, it's obviously boomed during lockdown. Everybody went onto TikTok. It is now one of the go-to places for news. So if you're not in that space, you're not kind of influencing or shaping. We use it very much as a different style of communication to the Twitter account. If you were to look at what we do, it is entirely different to what we do on Twitter. It's much more fun. It's much more about the city. It's much more about shining a light on, the fun facts about the city. And it was run to really bring those people that were in Birmingham at the time for the games, to get them to see more than just what they were coming in for around the city centre and out to Perry Bar, a bit more about our history, about some of the quirky facts about the city. And it is a place where we can have a little bit more fun and not take ourselves so seriously as we maybe have to on other platforms where we are talking about very serious issues. And we are, you can't be talking about service delivery and service failing or some of the very serious issues we have to communicate around on a platform that's, you know, also being used around, you know, five fun facts about Birmingham, or what's the best place to go and have brunch, or did you know you had more canals and benefits. So we are really quite clear about separating out some of our channels for the type of communications we need to do.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for then, hearing that answer, Councillor Mackie.
Well, comparing what some of my kids say on Twitter, on TikTok, I think I much prefer them to be watching you than some of the other things.
Oh, well, there you go. You mentioned, O'Leary, about keeping an eye on stories on social media that start to develop into something a bit bigger, and that alerts you to possible challenges and issues. Does that include hyperlocal sites on sort of Facebook and things? Do you keep an eye on those?
Yes, as much as we can. There are some of the Facebook groups are closed to us. So there are some areas where we know there are conversations happening and we can't get into those spaces, but sometimes people may alert us to them. So that helps us understand what's being said about some specific areas. I mean, housing is one of the areas where we do pick up. So there'll very often be photographs that are placed on Twitter of somebody who lives in one of our properties and they're taking a photograph of the mould in their flats. We can pick that up quite quickly and raise it to the service area and say, this is something you need to be aware of. Are you already aware of this particular individual? Is somebody looking into this, so that we can link in with the customer services team to make sure that, you know, that person gets picked up and dealt with and isn't just there. Because we know that some people use social media to sometimes share their frustrations about some of the stuff that they feel about us. So it's very important we pick it up and they don't get neglected, or they don't feel that nobody's listening to them. So we really try very hard to close that circle and bring them back in and make sure the service area is aware of those individuals.
I know that's music to my ears that there is some joined up work going on there, and I think we're just a couple more points. So the corporate communications team doesn't include the council's engagement and participation work. There's no overarching arrangement.
No, so that has now moved under. So we've moved into a new directorate with Richard Brooks starting, and his directorate's now incorporating a team called Public Participation Team. That will be really, I think, fully kind of up and running and operational from the beginning of the new year. That team will sit alongside my team, so there'll be now that closer connection in to the work that's happening. On things like big consultations, service area will normally engage us at the start, so we are aware of them and we can support them. We do things like with planning, for example, they will come to us and say there is a big piece of work going on around the big city plan, can we help support it? And we will. Some areas don't, and we will find out about it because we're monitoring social, we'll pick up on it, and then we'll go to them. I think with the development of this new team that's going to sit alongside, that will bring us all into the same directorate and same space, and that will help.
Right. I was going to ask you also about how we get the balance right between the proactive and reactive comms, but I think you've pretty much covered that between you. And just my final point really is around as co-ordinating scrutiny committees, how do we sort of communicate our work better to residents and citizens of Birmingham? Because we all know how important our work is, but it's much more difficult to get that out there in terms of sort of lay person speak. And that's not for you to answer now, O'Leary, but perhaps that's something for us to consider at a later meeting, and perhaps even need our own communication strategy to do that piece of work. Councillor.
Yeah, I could say, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that, and I think it's being addressed, but sometimes the quality of the stream that we've got coming out here is not conducive to having loads of our residents queuing up to want to watch it. You know, you've really got to want to get involved in the quality of some of the stream. It has taken a bit of a backward step, and I think if we could improve that would make it an easier watch. And then, hopefully we are relevant.
And I think work is underway on improving that, isn't it? Because we can see how far away we are from the screen, and I've had feedback from residents saying, we can't tell who's speaking, and So I think that's all part and parcel of that. But I think, you know, that could be something that, I mean, clearly the chair will need to have a discussion with him as well. But that's something we could look, the officers and the chair could have a think about that. I want to thank you both for coming, and I'm sorry that if you felt rushed, and apologies. It's always the way when you're second on the agenda that it tends to push back, because members always have lots of questions that they want to ask. So thank you very much both for coming. We do need to just note that the presentation, and I'm sure you'll agree to that. So thank you. And any other questions, and we'll email them through, O'Leary.
Yeah, absolutely. And also as well, if you don't see something, we want you to flag it to us, email me or contact me, because you know, you are the eyes and ears down on the ground. So anything that you feel needs to be raised up, we are always wanting to hear, and also good stuff that you feel is being overlooked. We really want to shine a light on that. So anything like that, you know, please feel free to contact me or Ali.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks both. Okay, so I'm going to apologise because we're now at 12 o'clock, but I'm going to try and complete this in the next 10 minutes. So if everybody can bear with me, that'd be fantastic. We're going to move on to the next item, which is the Scrutiny work programme for 22 and 23. We did have in the appendices a copy of work programmes for all of the Scrutiny committees for the next 3 months, and not the 100-page document that we had last time, which you'll be pleased to hear. We've already lost Councillor Deakin, and we've had a few apologies. So what I'm going to do is invite the chairs that are still here, if they feel they need to add anything to what's already in the report, in the appendices, if you want to give us a very brief update on your work plan for the next 3 months. Councillor Suleiman.
Not really anything to add. I mean, our main focus on the committee over the next 3 months is the inquiry that we're doing, and we've made some really good progress on this. We've got some task and finish meetings set, and we've already got some of our evidence gathering sessions taking sort of place. So yeah, I think that's what I'd like to add for that.
Thank you, Councillor Suleiman.
Councillor.
That's here. I'm going to add. Other than that, our next week would have been on the 21st of December. We've had us too close to Christmas, and these periods were very. So we decided to bring our meeting forward to the 14th. Rather than having a formal meeting, we are doing a side visit to the university railway station. There's some issues there, so we're going to do a side visit. Then we got our work program for the next January, February, and March.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Idris.
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add apart from last week we had a meeting for housing and neighbourhoods, and we are taking fly tipping and cleaner streets so seriously that we had 2 officers from Wigan online informal meeting giving us briefing how they are successfully tackling this issue, and we learned a lot. And as an ongoing agenda for the next December and January meeting, we got this apart from other reports. We got somebody from Nottingham, and the following in January. So we are not, if you know, January we got one from Nottingham, and then there's another local authority, but I can't remember.
Don't know the detail of that. That's a committee that I've supported with, but I can check with Amelia.
Okay.
We are learning a lot from these because they've been very successful, and if we can learn from the experience and how we can implement some of those measures that they are being successful.
Thank you, Councillor Idris. Any questions for the scrutiny chairs? No, thank you. As my own committee, over the next couple of months, we will be reviewing reports and presentations from the Children's Trust, the Birmingham Safeguarding Children's Partnership, the Director of Children's Services, the Government Commissioner, and the AD of Education and Early Years. We've got a packed couple of meetings with a number of items that haven't all been quite finalised yet, so I'm not going to go into any more detail on them. until I've got that information. I am aware that we agreed in October to include the cross-cutting issue of domestic violence into the work programme. And I know that Councillor Yip has been working with officers to agree a roundtable meeting in December. So did you want to have a quick update on that as well, on the work that you've been doing? Is there anything to add?
To add on that, Chair, thank you for the opportunity that we've got the roundtable sorted. And I'm very grateful for Christian to putting that together. There's been a few compromises, but I think officers are working very well to try and make something happen before it's April.
Thanks, Councillor Yip, and I am really grateful that you agreed to take forward that piece of work, because you know, as you know, that I'm very passionate about it, but it's something that we've discussed for a long time, and it's very good to see that opportunity now being given to us to do that. So thank you for that, and just yeah, let me know if there's anything that you need me to help you with. So was there anything on the work plan? We talked about earlier about the possibility of doing some work on the communication strategy, so I'll leave that for officers and the chair to discuss. Fiona, did you want to update on the availability of the leader and cabinet member?
Yes, so in the items to be scheduled for the coordinating scrutiny committee, the two cabinet members that haven't been to this committee yet, to the leader and cabinet member for social justice, community cohesion, and
yes,
Councillor Cotton. Councillor Cotton is the cabinet member. It looks like Councillor Cotton might be able to make the
next month meeting, December meeting.
Sorry, Councillor Idris.
Councillor Cotton is coming to the, housing and neighbourhoods, but not.
Yes, the issue is the portfolios for the cabinet members cut across a number of different committees. So for Councillor Cotton, it looks like he might be able to attend the 27th of January. I'm still working on a date for the leader to attend. Unfortunately, Fridays also clash, that this committee clashes with a combined authority board meeting that he attends. So we're just trying to find a date that's available. But the other issue that I've highlighted in the covering report is there's been a request for a report to come to this committee on the early intervention and prevention programme. So that's a new item. So I'm just asking members if you agree to that coming to the committee. Prevention, yes. Yeah. There was a question whether it was coordinating's role or whether it was more service-specific role. But I think the conversation I had with Councillor Ball was it would be best maybe to start here if it's presented, so all the chairs of the different committees and members of this committee can understand that work. And then there might be specific pieces that, a bit like the employment and skills that were picked up today, that can then be signposted to a different committee. So those are the main points. The cover report also sets out the cross-cutting issues that have already been identified where members from one committee are invited to another item. I won't go through those in any detail, but that is there for members to refer to.
Thanks, Fiona. That sounds like a really sensible approach. And yeah, I did fail to mention on the on my scrutiny committee that the next two meetings are members from other committees have been invited from the inquiries that are being undertaken on those. So thank you very much on that. Yes, Councillor Law?
I think the cost of living crisis is across apartments, communities. It's something that we can, if things really go bad, then something we can bring it here.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that will come across anyway. We will always have those discussions when we have different cabinet members and officers here, like we did today with the communications team. It'll always be part of that because it's such a big issue for the council to be supporting residents with. So yeah, I mean, Fiona will make a note of that, and we can have that discussion with Councillor Bohr as well.
Yeah. I wasn't at the resources committee yesterday, but it certainly, talking to the chair, it was one of the issues in terms of the budget that the council's allocated to the cost of living crisis, that might be an issue that the resources committee wanted to look at in more detail, actually, how that money's been allocated and spent.
Yeah.
I can feed back on that because I wasn't at the meeting yesterday and haven't caught up on that one yet, but I know it's an issue that they were interested in.
Okay, Councillor Law, thank you for that. We're going to move swiftly on. We've only got a couple of items left. So item 9, request for call-in. Any councillors have any call-in or petitions? No, just on that point, I do know that the call-in for the Housing Repairs, Maintenance and Investment 2024 will be heard by Councillor Idris's committee.
On the 29th, yeah.
29th. Thank you for confirming that. Thank you. Have we got any other urgent business? Haven't been notified of any in advance. Thank you. The date of our next meeting is the 9th of December at 10 o'clock. And if members could give authority to myself and officers, thank you, for between meetings. And I just want to thank you all. It's been a long meeting. We're 14 minutes over, so we've done pretty well. But we had 2 quite comprehensive reports. So thank you very much for your input and contribution. And
I've got another quick